Well, happy Saturday morning to all of you. I hope that each and every one of you have a safe and memorable Labor Day weekend. My wish for today's video is that this would serve as a source of encouragement to someone's heart who needs to hear it right now. It could be that in your life right now, you feel like things are not moving along smoothly enough. Maybe you're not detecting any kind of movement at all, and that concerns you. You don't feel like there's any wind at your sails, and all of your plans have been shipwrecked, and now you're stranded on this tiny little island of your own thoughts, and you're wondering if sanity is ever going to come rescue you and bring you back to a civilized way of thinking. You're not being irrational. You're being human. Every single one of us experience this, and it can be a real letdown. But I read a quote by George Mueller here just recently that I think will help. I think it'll shed some light on how to think about things like this. Here's what he had to say. He said, "It is comforting to know that not only the steps, but also the stops of a good man are ordered by the Lord." Think about that. He said it was comforting to know that. He had plenty of experience in knowing what it was for things to go your way and for things to not go your way, and to not detect any kind of movement at all and wonder if anything was ever going to happen. We associate movement with activity, and we in particular associate forward movement with progress. But that may not always be the case. But just because things are not moving at all doesn't mean nothing's going to happen. Doesn't mean that something isn't happening behind the scenes. See, George Mueller was a German evangelist who's got quite a reputation for having developed over about six orphanages back in the 1800s. He started his first one, I believe, was in 1836. And without going into the whole story of George Mueller, him and his wife decided that they would refuse a salary and rely strictly on prayer and spontaneous gifts to support the ministry of this orphanage. He was very concerned about the orphan children not having any place to live, no food in their stomach. They were very poor, and the mortality rate was very high. So that was his whole impetus for starting this. But like I said, he never once asked for money, and sometimes he didn't see any kind of movement. And they would run out of supplies, and they would run out of all these procurements that they needed to feed these children. And he would pray about things, and he would relinquish control to God. And there's so many stories about how at the 11th hour, there'd be a knock at the door, and provisions would be made. And it happened time and time again. He would tour the world, I think in his later years. For about 20 years, he toured the world giving testimony and witness to what God was able to do through prayer and through faith. And it's a very compelling story. But some of them are real nail biters. And most of us are not given this kind of an obligation or this kind of a ministry where we're taking care of orphan children. Believe it or not, his orphanages stayed in operation until 1950, and they actually housed over 17,000 orphans over that entire time from 1836 to 1950. His ministry rescued over 17,000 orphans. That's what the power of relinquishing control, prayer, trusting God does. That's what it does. It does big things. But don't think for a minute that he didn't know what it was like for things not to be moving at all, because he was certainly familiar with it. You see, what he understood and what he believed was that God never takes anything away from us without the intention of giving us something better. I do believe he took to heart what it said in Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not into thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." See, I think that's what the definition of a good man in his mind was. As a man who relied upon God to meet his needs, because he lived that. He didn't just talk about it, he lived it. And when we relinquish control and we understand that God's timing is different than ours, there will be movement, and there will be times there will not be movement. But we can take comfort in the fact that sometimes God actually stops us in our tracks so that we can take a better view of what's going on around us. We can hear things we wouldn't hear if we were moving at a faster pace. We can ask ourselves, what can I do to serve right where I'm standing right now? What is it that God has for me? And when you embrace that, it makes all the difference in the world. So you see, just because things are not moving along smoothly enough, or perhaps not moving at all, doesn't mean you're not where you should be. It might be that you're exactly where you ought to be. I hope that's helped. If it has, let me know. Make your comments down below. I'll catch you in the next one. Be wise.